who says God's description in Scripture is often anthropomorphic. It is not true, though, that we are theomorphic. Is it not true, though, that we are theomorphic instead? Why, therefore, must the imagery of God, standing, etc., be metaphorical and not real? Are we theomorphic? So you have a principle. Your principle seems to be we're theomorphic. I'm not sure what that word means. But that principle is the idea behind that principle is that therefore the imagery in the discussion of God is literal when it talks about him, say, standing. Well, let me just say, I think that this issue has layers. So God is, it is, okay, the historical pedigree of this doctrine about God not having a physical body, like some sort of permanent physical body that's innate to his nature. That's important that I add those qualifiers. That is like primo. This is like a strong Christian belief. It's also in Scripture in several places. So let me give you an example. We do have statements like in Genesis that God was walking in the cool of the garden. We talked about that a little bit in the last week's Q&A. But then we have other statements, like Solomon, when he builds the temple and he asks God to make his presence dwell there. We have two elements that go on there. One, God's presence dwelt in the temple, but without any physical body in the temple. Now, if God has a body, how is it that his presence is especially in the temple when his body's not in the temple? That's confusing, right? If that's the case. But also Solomon, when he is building the temple and asking for God's special presence to be in that temple, and he's inaugurating it, he makes a careful qualification, a theological point that Solomon makes to make sure that we don't misunderstand the temple or the nature of God. He says to God, as he's praying that God would fill the temple with his Spirit, he says, not that it could actually contain you, for even the heaven of heavens cannot contain you. That's interesting, isn't it? So God's actual presence is uncontainable. You cannot limit it in this world. And that's the nature of a physical body, is that it limits your presence. Right? Does that make sense? So another argument against this would be things like God saying that he measures the universe with the span of his hand. Well, like if we're to take these as literal descriptions of physical hands, then we see God walking in the garden, small enough to be in one garden on the earth, with a hand that's as big as the entire universe. That's a problem. In other words, we're obviously misinterpreting Scripture, I think, if we go down that route. There was another point I was going to make, which is the incarnation. So Jesus, during the incarnation, he takes on a physical form. Now, you're paralleling humans and God, and you're like, well, maybe we have physical form. We're theomorphic. We have physical form because God has physical form. So we're made in his image. I think that's kind of what you're getting at, actually. We're made in God's image. We're made with physical form. So he has physical form. This would make the incarnation unnecessary because we already bear the image of God in the physical sense. So why does Jesus have to come and be born in a human form so that he can stand to represent all of humanity? The incarnation would require Jesus to abandon some other body that we're designed after to take on an additional body that we're designed like it starts to not make sense. So the nature of the incarnation is that this is this special moment where God is now entering into flesh. Now, there might be Christophanies in the Old Testament appearance, but this isn't God having this sort of permanent physical body. This is some sort of manifestation for God to communicate to man, for God to interact with mankind. But it is not a human body or humanoid permanent body that God always inhabits. I would say those things are true. Hold on, I'm getting texts. The link was wrong. Oh dear, you've got to be kidding. Who did we link to? How do I just unpin? Literally, YouTube does not give me the option of unpinning it. I'm pinning this one. restoringfaithinc.org. I need the exact link, Sarah Zimmerman. Can you send me the exact link? Is it restoringfaithinc.org?
I'll send this.
What? Okay, my watch literally just sent a text message. Okay, You know what? I just want you guys to know, though, that this is a very professional ministry that I've got going on here, and it's only the best. Org. I hope that's right. Man, what an unfortunate moment. Okay, so restoringfaithinc.org. Okay, not the best website name as far as remembering it, but it's there. So they're incorporated. Maybe they got the 501c3. I don't know. You'll have to ask them. Check their website. Let's go to question number 2.